Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Tell Your Story. I'm your host, Todd Nesloni, the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership for TEPSA. And each week, I look to bring you a different guest who has encouraged, inspired, or challenged me in one way or another, and have them come on and share a piece of their story. I am so insanely excited to have a very, very special guest on with me today, Toni Christopher. Toni, tell everybody a little bit about who you are.
Hi. Well, thanks for having me first. I'm a mom first. I think that's probably the role that I value most right now in my life is that I'm a mother. I'm a Christian first. I guess I should say that's my most important. I'm a child of God first. And then I'm a mother. I'm a single mother. I'm widowed, not quite 3 years yet. So traveling that path. And I'm a survivor because I'm battling cancer for the second time on this journey. So, and I'm a caregiver. I was for my husband for almost 20 years, and I am for my daughter and then other family members. So I think that's how I define myself. It's kind of my nature to take care of people. So that's me. I'm also a marketing director at Camp Allen, and I've been here 21 years now.
So if anybody listening is in the state of Texas and you have not checked out Camp Allen, it is a fantastic place, not only for kids to go to during the summer, but the programs they provide and the educational resources and then the team building opportunities that exist there. So just a little plug on the side. I love Camp Allen and love taking our students there. But
I have to shout out that Webb Elementary is coming here. So I know you and I worked closely to get them here. And
yes.
Continuing to take place. So
yay, that is exciting.
I saw they're coming next week. So
I love that. Well, the other thing for my viewers and listeners to know is Toni, I actually taught her daughter when I was teaching in Waller. And so this is such a cool little full circle moment for me because, we've been friends on Facebook for a few years now, and I've gotten to just follow along with your journey. And of course, your daughter is doing incredible things as well. And so when I asked you to come on today, I was super excited. You said yes. So I want to, there's one of the reasons I started Tell Your Story was to allow people to hear the stories of others and hopefully feel less alone with things they're going through. And I know you have a very personal battle, and you mentioned it when you were introducing yourself, but something that you've dealt with over the last couple of years is this battle with cancer, and not only once, but then having it come back again. And you've been very vulnerable and open through blog posts and things that you've shared online. So tell me a little bit about where this all started.
Sure. A little over 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with cervical cancer and had a lengthy battle, but got it into remission after about 7 rounds of chemotherapy, 3 days of internal radiation, and also 6 weeks or 7 weeks, actually, we had to extend it, of external beam radiation. And it was a tough battle, but I used many parts of that battle as points of reference that gave me strength that I think I didn't notice it so much at the time I was going through it, but when I tried to do something hard later after that first battle, I would think, this is nothing. I've laid with rods of radiation in my abdomen and other places for, where I couldn't even roll over. So it gives you a strength that you don't know you have, that once you've conquered something, you can think back. I tell people often, I had somebody that was going in for a surgery the other day that they were dreading, and never to make light of anybody's battle, but I said, at some point, this is going to suck right now, but at some point, this is just going to be a bad memory. Right. And so if you can go into it looking at that just let me get through this and let it be a bad memory that I can complain about or whatever, but then it's behind me, then it's in the rearview mirror. So long story sort of short, we had trouble getting the tumor to shrink to begin with. It was inoperable. And we added some more radiation onto that. Typically, radiation is what kills cervical cancer. And when it still wasn't responding enough, we ended up doing a radical hysterectomy. They didn't get clear margins, but felt that because of the radiation, it continues to work. And I was in remission for a full 10 years.
Right.
And just had some things, I grieved very hard after my husband passed away from his second transplant. And I think I was grieving not only for myself, but for my daughter. And so it was a very hard thing. And we were so raw. We had compounded grief. We actually had 5 funerals in 1 year. With other family members. And so it's hard to come up for air when, no matter how much I reached out with my church, I went through Grief Share. I have an amazing circle of young widows, we call ourselves, that I've met. And I reached out for every source and resource that I could to try to grieve as best I could, if you will. But I feel like that deep grief allowed my immune system to get down. And, of course, I have no proof of that, but I kind of think that's what happened. And it came back, and it was stage 4. It was in my lung this time. It had not returned in my pelvis, but is in my lung. And so the new battle began. Not always a promising prognosis. Metastatic cervical cancer just does not have a good outcome usually. But, I can sit here and tell you that I'm in a trial now. I went through 14 rounds of chemotherapy and was not fun, but lost my hair. Did not lose it the first time, did the second time. And that was hard. It was hard for my daughter. She's, that's been the hardest part of all this, is seeing her have to be a caregiver for me at times, and that fear of what if I lose mom too. So it's been very hard. So that's where we're at. We got to a point where I did a lung resection after the 14 rounds. We thought we had it isolated to just there. And unfortunately, it came back in a lymph node in my lung, same lung. And so then they referred me to trials and said, you've done really well with everything we've given you. So you're the candidate we want to put in a trial and see if there's something. So fortunately, I made it into a trial, and I'm taking immunotherapy. So if you've been watching that in the news, it's had a lot of promising results. And I'm hoping that I'm going to be one of those that gets to shake Jim Allison's hand and thank him personally. So.
Well, and one thing that I've noticed as I've followed your journey, Toni, is that your faith plays a very big role in you being able to, I guess the best way to put it is to maintain sanity, where you don't just lose complete hope and are in this utter despair. Has your faith always been that grounding feature for you, or did you watch that develop more as you went through these things?
Definitely it's developed. Billy, my husband that I lost, we always said we felt like we were blessed because at a very young age, we both got it. We got what the important things are in life. It's not what car you drive, what job you have, how much money you have in the bank. It's how much time you have with the people you love. Right. And so we always felt, as crazy as that sounds, we kind of felt blessed in a way to get that when most people don't get close to the Lord or realize those values at a later point in their life. I feel like my faith definitely has strengthened with every battle. I'm in a little bit different perspective than some Christians. I don't feel that God puts bad things in our life to make us strong.
Right.
And that's not always a consensus. I feel that we have a loving Father. And just like I couldn't put these things in Caitlin's life to say, it's going to make her stronger, it's going to draw her closer to the Lord, I would never do that. And I don't think God does either. However, I can testify that I do grow stronger with him in every battle. And I think that he's there with me through the battles. And I think, I think that's the beauty of it. It's people always say, oh, but you're so much stronger now, or your faith is so much stronger. Well, sure it is. I don't think that the trial was given to us for that purpose. I think it's a result of it. So just a little bit different perspective.
and I really like that perspective. I think that's a very interesting way to look at it and to think about that. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Well, you mentioned that your husband passed away, and recently, and I know that that was really difficult for you and your daughter on top of everything else happening.
Mhm.
Being a single parent now, and watching your daughter grow up and 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 go on to the next stage of her life, how do you how do you answer her questions? How do you provide that support where you still have hope?
Um, Hope for my life and for where my treatment's
Well, I
going, or
mean,
hope for.
I think that, when any parent is going through this, or when a child is watching a parent
Mhm.
go through something difficult, it's hard on both sides. Um, I feel like the kids don't know, like, how am I best able to support you? I can't heal you,
Sure,
but I want to. And the parents thinking, well, it's my job to protect you, and I have to be there for you. And so, I mean, it's such a balancing act that
sure,
I could see it be very overwhelming at times, especially for the parent, of knowing this is my baby watching me go through this. I wish they
sure.
didn't have to. So I guess the better question is, how do you not let that part consume you? And how do you keep focused on just being your best for her?
I think at first when it came back, I let myself go to the internet a lot.
Mhm,
It's just kind of how I'm wired. I'm a
mhm,
researcher, and I feel like even though I learned with my husband, I'm not in control. God is, and
right,
life and the way things play out. But I realized that I was getting so caught up in the what if and trying to prepare for, we're all going to die,
mhm,
but, it being sooner than later. And that is a horrible way to live.
right,
I mean, it was just gut wrenching. And, I went through a phase where, I was filling a hope chest with everything I possibly could for if I'm not there for graduation or for her wedding or for her first child, and trying to make sure that I had some things covered. And and while that helps me feel prepared, and it kind of
mhm,
calmed a little bit of my anxiety, at the same time, I heard a while back that we die one day of our life, we live all the other days.
oh,
So if we spend that, I don't remember who said it,
right,
unfortunately, but if we spend all of our days dreading that one day, that's just a horrible waste of our other days. And so, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say I never worry about it and I don't
mhm,
still have those thoughts, but I just don't want to live that way. Hope is so much better than fear.
yeah,
And that saying that you see on every shirt, and a lot of Christians, embrace it as hope over fear. And I think that's just so much better.
mhm,
I can't change the outcome. I can put my faith in the Lord that He's going to answer our prayers, and that this will be the path for me. And if it's not, I have to be okay with that. And I
right,
think, as far as Caitlin, she asks me sometimes, what if I lose you too?
mm,
And I say, you are close to the Lord, and her faith is strengthened too through all this. She's now counseling at summer camp at Camp
mhm,
Allen, and I've seen her, just God works in such amazing ways. Last summer, she had a little girl in her campsite that had lost her father the year before.
oh,
And I thought, if you think that's coincidence, that God just
wow.
lined that up perfectly. But, I said, you will be okay as long as you don't turn away from the Lord, because you've seen He is the only thing that's brought us through the
Right,
past 2.5 years, and that's who will be there. And other family members, of course. But it's hard. It's hard um, to not treat her like a child. She's almost
mhm,
17, and so to let her see my vulnerabilities. I don't want her to think that. Just like I think parents should argue every now and then in front of kids. If they think that that never happens in a marriage, they're sadly upset when they get in a real marriage. And so it's kind of the same way. I want to let her see me be vulnerable at times,
mhm,
but I also want her to see that I can draw strength from the Lord, and have faith. And um, sometimes you just have to just keep
mhm,
going.
mhm.
That's the only choice we have.
Now, you've shared a lot of your journey very publicly through your blog posts and things like that. When did
Mhm.
that become a decision you made where you wanted to allow people to walk alongside you?
Well, I'm a pretty open book, just my personality. Um, I think it started, just posting on Caring Bridge because people that maybe weren't with me every day wanted to know an
Mhm,
update. I
mhm,
did one for Billy as, throughout his transplant process. And so it's a way also when you work with 80 people and you go to church with 100 plus people.
mhm.
It's just it can be exhausting, especially
Right.
when you're going through treatments and you're tired. And it can be a way to to let the masses know where I was at the
Mhm,
time. So it started that way. And I think it just became very therapeutic for me to be able to kind of put it out there, of where I was at. People often say to me, "Oh, but you look so good."
mhm.
And sometimes that can be hard to hear when you feel like crap,
Right.
and I tell people, well, I'm going to put makeup on every day. That's just kind of how I am. For one thing, Caitlin would really see me sick if she saw me without makeup. So, um, my coworkers tease me. I usually say, just put your damn lipstick on and go. You just got to go sometimes, whether you feel like it or not. You just got to keep going. Um, and so that's just kind of where it was. I could put how I really felt out there on
Yeah.
my Caring Bridge post. Where I was getting to with that story was, I posted once me without a wig and just curled up in a ball. And, I don't ever want to portray because for work purposes, I felt better. I felt healthier, even going through the chemo treatments to wear a wig and to wear makeup. It just made me feel more like me. I didn't like people to pity me at work or anywhere really, but especially at work.
Right.
Um, but I felt it was important in that one post to let people know, hey, if you're going through this battle and this is how you feel, I get it. I feel like this. Fortunately, it's not every day that I feel like this, but that, third day after treatment,
Right.
it's a beast sometimes. So it was just a way for me to put out my emotions as well as updates.
As I began to share my story of dealing with losing my mother and the unexpectedness and the health issues and things like that, I found more and more that there's so many people that have someone very close to them in their life that is fighting a battle similar to this. And sometimes those of us who aren't on the medical side of things, we don't know how to help and how to be
Mhm.
that support. And so, what advice would you give to people who may be listening or watching today who say, well, my grandmother's going through this, or my mother, or my
Mhm.
sister, or my brother, and I don't know how to best be there for them? What would you say would be the best way they could be there?
Um, and I've learned this personally. I've learned it. I tease and say I'm going to write about a book about what not to say to people because, um, you don't tell someone that's lost their husband this happened so you would draw closer to the Lord. That's not what they
Yeah,
want to hear at that time.
I
Or,
agree.
lots of things that I won't go into. But um, I think probably the most important thing is just to be there, not say, let me know if I can do anything.
Right.
A lot of people, including me, I'm not going to reach out and say
Yeah.
I need something. I will for Caitlin,
Mhm.
or my animals if I need somebody to feed my animals or something, but typically not for me. It's just
Right.
not, I don't feel comfortable with that. But if you say, hey, I'm making dinner Wednesday night, I can drop it at the door or I can bring it in, whichever you'd prefer. Things like that make people feel like they have to say yes and accept the help, I think is really important. Sometimes, I've learned both through funerals and, battling cancer, the one thing that means the most to me is when someone says they're praying for me.
Mhm.
I think that's the most important thing. One of my posts, I had just said that because I have ADHD, I put a little reminder on my phone. Otherwise, I'll sometimes fall asleep in my prayers or different things. And so I just set an alarm every day at 12:30 to pray for my healing.
Mhm.
And I shared some of that in a Karen Bridge post, what I was specifically saying. And then all of a sudden people started saying, hey, I put an alarm on my phone. I'm praying for you every day at 12:30. And I was just with my 3 dearest friends. We've been friends for over 30 years. Went to junior high with two of them and college roommate. We had a girls' weekend and we were in the lake house and phone started going off at 12:30. And you just, that means more than any other method of help.
Yeah.
Or reaching out to somebody is just pray for them and find out if there's a way that you can help them. This community had an amazing benefit for me. And, knowing that I can pay my deductibles for several years to come, and I have that medical account set aside for only that has given me a peace that, that's priceless. And it's given me a hope that this treatment that I may not be eligible for without that benefit has given me. So that's huge, but just finding out what they need, if you see something or if they have animals or a yard or something. I have somebody, dear friend of mine and Billy still picks my trash up every Saturday. And, it means the world to me.
Yeah.
I don't have a truck
It's those
anymore.
little things.
So yeah, it's a little thing, and he's going anyway. It's on his way, but he still turns down my street, goes through my cattle guard, my gate code and everything, and that's a lot. Those little things mean a lot.
What I've always told people is, there's two things that I've always thought about in issues, and not issues, but in situations like this. And one of them is the prayer, and the second thing is even just checking in. Because I think when you go through something and it is for a long period of time, I feel like at times you feel like nobody even cares anymore because I've been going through this for so long. Like they're not checking in. It's like when it first happens or when something flares up, everybody's all in. And then as time goes on, it's like nobody even recognizes the daily battles you're still going through. And so I love that you say, it's just those little things like picking up the trash is that reminder that somebody still remembers that I'm here and knows that I can't do this alone. And so I really appreciate you kind of sharing that side of things too.
Sure. And I think one other thing is for me is to not sit in a place where you feel neglected or needy or, and it's one thing that really helped me a lot through grief is, it can hurt so bad. And if you keep focusing on how bad something hurts or how bad something is, it's very easy to get down and to get hopeless. And if you focus on how blessed you are and the blessings you still have and focus on helping others, that's one of the biggest things we do in our grief support group, which surprises people. I was telling a coworker that I had to get to my grief meeting and he said, "Oh, I'm sorry." And I said, "Oh, no, it's a good thing. I love my grief group. They're my sisters." But we went and assembled boxes to give other widows when they're first, newly widowed, that has the waterproof mascara and all these amazing things that, and just doing for others makes you focus less on your own problems and more on helping others. And I think that's essential too.
And that is the best advice. I hope if anybody doesn't hear anything else from this conversation, it is exactly that in those moments, and that's what I always tell people, when you're having the worst day ever, find a way to go pour into somebody else because it'll lift your mood up and remind you of the good that exists everywhere. Well, Toni, I've so enjoyed this conversation, and there's one question that I always love to end all of my Tell Your Stories on, and that is, if there was one thing that you wish more people in this world knew or understood, what would your one thing be?
About me or
however you want to interpret that. Everybody interprets it differently, so however you interpret that question.
Well, I've talked a lot about my faith and that I don't think, I tell people I've had a lot compounded in 3 years.
Yeah.
But everybody has something, none of us get through this life without trials. It's just, it's a fact. And how we respond to it makes the difference. Right. Who we draw near to, who we support ourselves with, who our circle of friends are. If you don't have a big circle, go make one because you're going to need them. Family has been, my family, my mother is just, and my father, they have, my mom has lived with me probably more the last 2 years than she's lived in her own home. Wow. Huge sacrifices, just such a gift in both of my parents. but is to build your circle, and that life is kind of what you make it. If you focus on the bad stuff, that's how you view it. But if you look at how blessed you are, help other people, and just keep going, that's essential. I had someone the other day, I was reflecting on, um, an incident in my life, and then they knew about the 2 transplants and Billy passing. And she said, "Oh my gosh, you've just had such a hard life." And I said, it's funny though. I don't view it that way. I view it as a blessed life,
Right.
and I still, yes, I have stage 4 cancer, but there's still a lot of really good days. And Caitlin and I are making memories every day. And that's what life is about, It's really, I think that's it. Just that my life hasn't been a tragedy. It's been a life full of faith and memories and an amazing family. And I hope that I'm passing that on to Caitlin. I hope I'm showing her that you can be strong, and that you can really get through anything if you just choose to. We all, that's something we're told both a lot, Caitlin and I. "Oh, you're so strong. I just don't know how you're so strong." It kind of bothered me, because at first I thought, well, what other choice do I have? I mean, it's not like I've asked for any of this to be an overachiever or anything, but I've since changed my view on that. I do think we have a choice. And I've seen people that have a trial and they form an addiction, or they just let themselves, and I do think depression is a chemical imbalance, so don't misunderstand that, but I think at times you have to fight it.
Yeah.
And sometimes that may be getting medicine or what have you in different instances. I've seen people that just curl up and sleep for days and days, and they can't pull themselves out of that. It takes a conscious effort to keep going.
Nothing comes naturally. Nothing just shows up at your door and you're like, oh, everything's easier now. And so
Right.
I love that so much. Well, Toni, I have so been impacted by your story and following along with it. And when I asked for you to come on, I was very excited that you agreed, because I know that your story, and I'm not even dealing with anybody with cancer or anything in my life, but following along and seeing your hope and your faith and your passion, and seeing how evident it is that Caitlin adores you and always has, and the effort you put in.
That's debatable on some days, but most of the time.
But the effort you put in as a mother to make sure that there isn't wasted time between you two, and just the outlook that you have in the midst of anything is just inspiring. And so I thank you so much for coming on and sharing some of that story here today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And thank you, all of my listeners and viewers, again for joining another episode of Tell Your Story. Remember, you can check out past episodes on Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, wherever you get your podcasts, it's there. I hope today's conversation with Toni has inspired you and encouraged you to get out there and tell your story, because every story matters.